When the old people told the story, they said the first line of our creation story is Tarawa, the creator, is the source of all knowledge and power in the universe. We're in White Shield, North Dakota. My name is Jasper Young Bear. I'm a member of the Mandan Hadadza and Arikara Nation. And sometimes I teach. So today I'll play the part of a teacher. This is the stage where we contemplate the origin of how we came to be as spiritual beings in physical bodies. These are things that help us to understand our maleness, our femaleness, family, relationships. And some of what I'm going to tell you, if you analyze it with your mind, it might not make sense. But I'm asking you to suspend your perceptions, and I will show you some of the things that are involved, the archetypal, the symbolic stuff. Because this is how we hide sacred knowledge. If it were to be analyzed with the mind, anybody that hears this could totally understand things, but it's not meant to be that way. It's meant to be discovered over a lifetime. And as a child, I got to hear different stories 20, 30 times, 40 times. And it's just like listening to music. You start to say, this is the part where they're going to say this, or this is the part we're going to say that. And as a kid, you don't understand that. There's a mystical aspect to all stories, and we believe that it has a spirit, and that the spirit lives inside of you, and that you study these your whole life. And we have different levels of stories. We have a story you tell a little kid, real simple, cute, nice. And then when you become an adult, we tell an adult version that has more details and is more poignant and more direct. And then you have a ceremony. The ceremonies are based upon the creation story. We're going to be talking about the mother and the father, symbolic, archetypal figures within the stories. And we don't really have any evil entities in our creation story. We don't have no nemesis of the creator. The creator has no enemies. But we're talking about how we understand conflict and resolution and relationships and interacting with each other. So this part of the creation story begins to talk about the sacredness of our relationships. And we live in a time in the unnatural world where we don't value relationships and how they're meant to serve us and how they're meant to serve our humanity. And I grew up around a culture where people that are not related to you have responsibilities to take care of you, have responsibilities to contemplate that, especially the office of chief represents the love and compassion the Creator has for our people. And at some level, we're all those leaders, and we have to learn from the stories what it really means, not what the mental part of it is. But what's it mean to us emotionally, symbolically? So understanding the creation stories just with your mind and just taking it apart with your intelligence will leave you with nothing. And so this is meant to be taken as a whole, and it's something that can teach you your whole life. And so I'll begin with this. Long ago in the stars, we're going to talk about stars. There's the evening star. She's the most beautiful of the stars. And all the other stars wanted to mate with her. All the other stars wanted to be with her. And so at that time, none of them were allowed to, because women resist people, men coming onto them. Stars are no different in this case. And this is the mother of our people. She wouldn't just be with any star. And so the story talks about her unwillingness to have children, unwillingness to mate. And in her vagina, in her private parts, she had teeth, in case anybody tried to. And she had 5 protectors. These protectors are 5 constellations in the stars. And I'll tell you what they symbolically mean, because I could tell the story, but you wouldn't know what it means. And the first constellation is a snake. So the snake is the female half of the water cycle. Shishkoku Tswadukti, the sacred water ring, or sacred water circle that encompasses the whole earth. And this female snake protects her, and she represents evaporation. She represents the gentleness of that process. She also represents the power of the female energies that should be respected. She represents that, and then the other 4 protectors that the evening star had was a bear, a mountain lion, a bobcat, and a wolf constellation. The bear represents the thunder. The mountain lion represents the lightning. The wolf represents the wind, and the bobcat represents the hail and rain. And they represent the male aspects of the water cycle. And it's these star beings that protect the evening star. And she is in the garden of the gods, the garden of the powers up above, which are also happening here on earth. So the story is happening simultaneously up above in the stars, but it's also happening upon the earth. So the stars and the earthly manifestations of the water cycle, they're connected. And she lives in this garden, and being a gardening people, you can imagine how important knowing when to plant. The ceremonial calendar and the gardening calendar, shiti au, these two go together. The moon cycles, the star cycles. And so our lodges are star observatories. And if you really want to understand spiritual energy and spiritual power, it comes from above. And you manifest those star powers here upon the earth. A lot of times people talk about prayers and manifesting different things. But in order for you to really understand your own power, you are the sacred center. And the stars are very important to you. And everything that you do is a reflection from above. So at this time, this evening star rejected all the other stars. And she sits in the east. When you look at the sun as it sets, the first star you'll see in the east is the evening star. Before the sun rises, right when it's about to come up, the last star you'll see is a bright star to the east. And this is the morning star. He is not the chief of the stars, but he is the most powerful of the warriors. And he has a war club, and he has a bundle, a small bundle, and he wants to get with the evening star to court her and marry her, be with her, and have children. And so cosmologically, he represents the potentials of having children. He represents the male primal forces that seek females. And so this morning star decides, I'm gonna go across, and he asks his brother, the sun, he said, come help me. Carry some of my stuff, I'm gonna go see her. In order to do that, he has to come across the Milky Way. The North Star is the chief of the stars, and he's a man. And his dad is the South Star, which is the Death Star. And in order for the morning star to cross the Milky Way, he has to go all the way across the sky. In this journey, he's going to use his stone hammer, his war club, and then he's going to use his bundle. And as he begins the journey, it begins to talk about the theology of the hands. So I have to kind of explain that before, because if I just told the story straight, you wouldn't know what I'm saying. On your hands are your relationships, the sacred relationships. And remember, on this tree of life, this is the female side, and this right side is the male side. And this is the relationships, the 5 sacred relationships, female relationships that you have in your life, and the 5 male relationships you have in your life. And as he begins to cross, he's going to encounter natural disasters, so to speak, earthquakes, fires, volcanoes, hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, just as you encounter in your journey different obstacles. He begins to come across from the east to the west. He defeats all of the natural disasters by reaching into his medicine pouch and throwing fire at that. And I need to explain the understanding of fire. Fire is consciousness. Fire is spiritual power. Fire is knowing. And so fire is actually a real big part of this stage of the creation. Once again, on your hands are your relationships, the sacred relationships. And the morning star, as he starts to defeat them, he says, I defeated my grandmother. And then he goes on the male side, he said, I defeated my grandfather. I defeated my mother. I defeated my father. I defeated my sister. I defeated my brother. I defeated my daughter. I defeated my son. I defeated my granddaughter. I defeated my grandson. This word defeat in English doesn't mean defeat. It means I have overcome them with the sacred knowledge of this bundle. And so it teaches us how to use the sacred knowledge in bundles. When you say defeat, it doesn't mean that. It's a better word would be mastery in English. A better word would be mastery. I have mastered my relationship with my grandmother. I have mastered my relationship with my grandfather. I have mastered my relationship with my mother, my father, my sister, my brother, my daughter, my son, my granddaughter, my grandson. So that's what I have to kind of explain there. So even though the story says he defeated them, he's really said, I have mastered these relationships. Before we came into this world, we made agreements as spiritual beings with everybody in these 10 relationships. Everybody else that's not in these relationships, they may or may not be a part of our destiny, but these 10 are. These are the ones you must master. And we have a lot of rules about these relationships. So when I tell the creation story, I need to kind of explain each one of them. We have 2 types of relationships, and those relationships are respect and teasing. Indians like to tease. Who can you tease and who you can't tease is actually really important. Who has full rights to get after you and you can't say nothing. And whenever you have relationships with people, you could be in the most ruggedest situations with these people and they could say whatever they want, but as long as you stick to the correct form of respect, and generally these are all different levels of respect, that these relationships will behoove you. And this is how you create community. You create community by you understanding your choices in your relationships, especially the ones that they were part of your spiritual agreement that you made before you came into this world, that these are the ones that I must deal with. I must master these ones. Doesn't matter what they do. It only matters what you do, and that you have mastered these relationships. This morning star crosses the Milky Way, defeating these 10 natural disasters and talking about the relationships. And so isn't some of our relationships disasters in those? And so especially in modern times, we don't know how to relate to them. We think there has to be a 50-50, there has to be equality, but there never is an equality, there's an equity. And we have to use our minds to maneuver through relationships with people. And it doesn't matter what they do. If they're correct, it's your time to learn from that relationship. If they're wrong, you can say they're wrong, but I'm still not going to say anything or do anything. I will stick to how the relationship is supposed to teach me. In my sense, I didn't have a real close relationship with my biological father, but I loved him and I knew who he was, and that's the agreement. I had to accept that his life went on after my parents had split, and that's what I was supposed to understand. I would never went on a spiritual journey if I had a dad that always took care of me and loved me and helped me all the time, because I would have been so ensconced in my dad's love, and but I wasn't. And so that was what I chose. Me and him chose that together. And so sometimes this isn't logical. You'll not find logic in the chambers of the human heart. And so me and him agreed, I'm going to give you all these relatives. I'm going to give you grandmas and grandpas from time immemorial. I will give you these powerful bloodlines. I will love you when I see you. And that's the one thing I can say about my father, though I had never seen him very often. I felt loved by him. And that was our agreement. One of the great things I know, and my teacher told me, he said, no matter what a mom or dad did to a child, to a son or a daughter, or didn't do for you, wasn't there for you or didn't protect you, or what they did or didn't do for you, they only did it because they didn't understand. And that's why these creation stories are important, is because it gives us an understanding that maybe they didn't understand those relationships. In this case, I'm talking about my father and me as a son. So being that son, and having to really forgive, and really, I wanted to forgive. That was one of his greatest gifts to me, was that he said, I'm sorry. And I really, at the moment, I didn't cry, but later on, I really cried. And he said, can you forgive me for not being there? I was like, heck yeah, I can. I'm glad you feel that way, It was quite a road. And so taking the good from, not having that expectation of perfection. And so that's why we talk about looking at relationships really intensely. So the morning star, he crosses the Milky Way and has mastered these relationships. And in order to really get a wife, a man must master those relationships, because whatever you take and leave unresolved, your lack of understanding in the house that you came from, you will start a new house in a new relationship and have those same issues come up in your house. So that's kind of like the background information on why that part of the story is the way it is. And so we contemplate the mystery of this type of warfare he's going to do now. He's crossed the 10 relationships, the 10 natural disasters. He gets into a fight with the 5 protectors: the snake, the bear, the mountain lion, the wolf, and the bobcat. The morning star gets into an interaction with both the male and female aspects of the water cycle. Water is actually super important too, so we're talking about fire and water. Water is the chief of the elements, and these male and female aspects of the water cycle are represented by the snake, the bear, the mountain lion, the wolf, and the bobcat. And those are stars, and the snake represents the female evaporation process, the gentleness, the maintainer. the withholder. And this is what it really means. Whenever you're on the earth, it's every time you see a creek, a pond, a river, a sea, an ocean, there's a snake that maintains that. And there's a constant tension between the snakes and the other beings. But this is the female side of it. And have you ever seen other than a volcano going to an ocean, when do you ever see a violent evaporation process? You don't. It's very gentle. You look at a pond or a lake, and our people say that when a pond, a river, a lake dries up, the spirit of that which withholds and maintains that snake power that's up above. And so when you go up to a snake, it's very wise and very understanding. And so it's talking about the relationships really with water and the female aspect of water. And this is also the aspect of birth. These are all like archetypal, symbolic aspects. So when a woman has a baby, what happens? Her water breaks. The water is connected to the moon. In our beliefs, the moon was given the power over how many days you would be on this earth and what your destiny was upon the earth. That your life is a dream, that the mother of all the beings that can determine how souls and who comes into this world, the mother has the greatest power of calling the spirit that will enter her womb when she has sex. A woman can dream her children, and that's the power that she has in connection with the moon. And the moon is what gives dreams too, and the lengths of our lives. And I came into this world through midwifery medicine, old Indian medicine. My grandma Mary Gillette and Ella Waters, they were both did midwifery type of stuff. And my mother was in labor for 2 days with me.
Wow.
And my grandma, they kicked out the doctors and nurses. And they said, my great grandma told my mom, said, Mary's chewing on medicine right now. She's gonna come over and she's gonna spit it in your mouth. And your son's gonna come out. So Mary's really sitting there chewing on those roots and medicines. And it's a snake power that they use in the midwifery. And Grandma Mary came over, are you ready? Mom said she had bad breath and her teeth were kind of all rotten, kind of like, old ladies, She grabbed my mom and she would spit that into my mother, and my mom swallowed it. Put her lips right up to my mother and spit it into her. And in 2 minutes, I was out. And then on the other side, you have the male aspect of the water cycle. The male aspect is symbolized by this bear, which represents the thunder, the mountain lion, which represents the lightning. The wind is represented by the wolf. When you see wolves run, they look like they're running with the wind. And then when you see a bobcat, the stripes on its back represents the whole Milky Way, as well as the rain and the hail. And hail must have been a really big deal back in the day, because get clobbered on the plains with, baseball-sized hail. And so having a relationship with the water is actually important for gardening people. So developing a relationship, say we need water, but we need to be in balance. We don't need just feminine withholding, and we don't need big storms that are going to destroy our gardens. So it begins the process of a child understanding how to talk to the stars, which control things on the earth, and the ceremonies that go with talking with the stars. He defeats all of them, the snake, the bear, the mountain lion, the wolf, and the bobcat. Then a meteorite's flying by, he catches it, knocks her teeth out. And right before he's going to be with her, she says, I need you to stop. In order for us to be together, I need 3 things. The first thing she asked for was a bow and drill, to start a fire, to be able to make the spiritual warmth of a home. Then this one gets real specific. The next thing I need a cradle board. And this is how you're to make the cradle board. Talked about the white lacing. Talked about that thing when a baby's laying there, it has like a protector in case it falls over, the baby don't fall on its face. And it's painted with a rainbow. And on top of that rainbow is a bobcat, which represents the Milky Way. And the lacing represents lightning and thunder. And all the different symbols. So she said, I need this for our baby. And they said, and this is gonna be in order to keep this baby warm, I need a yellow calf robe or hide of a calf that's born in the wintertime. Because if a baby's born in the wintertime, that fur's gotta be thick and it's gotta be warm. So to find one of those is really rare. So that's what she asked for. She asked for a bow and drill. She asked for this cradle board, and she asked it to be wrapped up in a yellow calf that's born in the wintertime. And so, of course, he went and he got all that, and then they got together. And these are spiritual beings, so don't think literally. And I don't think I got that across in the first couple stages. It's not literal, it's symbolic. That's why I can teach you for 20, 30, 40 years of your life, is because you will go through different levels of understanding of what it means throughout your whole life cycle. And so then they get together and they have a daughter, and her name is Standing Rain Woman. Standing Rain Woman. And even that name has deep meaning, because nobody's ever seen standing rain, you know what I mean? But every woman is Standing Rain Woman. Every woman is the water of life. And every woman is the life giver. She is the living entity of the consolation that a man needs in his life. And that's why her name is Standing Rain Woman. A woman is the consolation, and our old people say a man's way is a hard way. And so the sun and the moon have a son. And this son is called Closed Man. And the woman is of earth and the man is of spirit. And I'll explain why they have these names. Because when you read it or you hear it the first time, it doesn't make any sense. This is why you gotta sit and think about it for a while. And when a man has a hard time and he's done all this fasting and being a warrior and being starving, he can't wait to get home to get a drink of water from his wife, Standing Rain Woman. And so every woman is Standing Rain Woman. And she is the one who gives life back to her husband from the harshness of his walk of life, leaving the village, going hunting, going on the warpath, going to do ceremonies. Those are all hard things to do. So she stays home and she makes that place for him. Now the sun and the moon, and people will debate this. We're the highest level of science in the history of the world. We're modern Western belief systems. It's the most logical and scientific, this is how you're taught. But we always knew about it. We always knew about DNA. It's in our symbols. The spirals represent DNA. One side of the spiral, one side of the DNA represents the sun. And then the other side represents the moon. And those are spiritual aspects of your humanity. The reason why he's called Closed Man is because when you're first born, all your doors, except the ones that keep your heart beating and stuff. Remember I said the Creator walked on 112 doors on the body? Those are the doors that are the meridians in your body. As you start to age and learn to communicate and go through these types of things, the doors begin to open inside of you. And you have more potential to do good and bad. But when you're born, your doors are closed, especially as a man. And so you need that help to open them through mentorships, through ceremony, through war, through just living, being a human being. So that's why the sun and moon have a son named Closed Man. And they get together. And at that time, Closed Man and Standing Rain Woman, they want to come down to the earth. They want to be a part of the earth. So those two aspects, the star people and the manifestations of the water cycle, get together. And they want to manifest these spiritual things in the stars upon the earth. They come down, they bring their son and daughter down as close as they can to the earth, and the storms rise up into the sky. Big tornadoes, big storms, and they slowly lower them to the earth. And so they come. But just like anything, what are they going to learn? And I don't have the time to go through each one of the powers. But there are at least in the 20s of some of the stars and the constellations I know, they all have war hammers. And they all have buffalo robes on. And those beings came to the earth and they're watching them. And so they took their war hammers, the stars above, and they struck the primordial waters. Those kids, they didn't know how to eat, they didn't know how to make a house, they didn't know how to make a bow, and they didn't know how to do things. So it would be like if you came down to the earth as a spiritual being that was manifesting into the physical frame, how would you interact with each other? How would you know how to survive? What plants to eat, how to eat animals. But when you're spiritually gifted, you can be gifted like this. And that's why ceremonies are important, because they open the door to the instantaneous gifting. Because the tree of life is a wishing tree, and it begins to teach you that in the creation story. So the powers above, all these stars dressed in a certain way, painted in a certain way, all together they strike the spiritual waters and gift Closed Man and Standing Rain Woman with the knowledge of how to do everything. And that's how they began to make houses and hunting tools. And that's how they came to be. All women are born with this mother's mind. They have the capability of just coming into this world. Their bodies have this natural tendency and natural connection to the endocrine system, the way they think, the way they talk, the way they learn, the way they feel. And men have the warrior's mind. And so this warrior's mind is really linear. It's really unemotionally attached, because they may have to kill. And you can't hesitate when you kill. And they're real linear because they have to be able to judge distances. And so their men are really good at judging distance from where I'm at to an object. And then I must be able to do it with the intention to take a life, both as a protector or as a gatherer of food for family. So they're built in a certain way. And through this marriage of Closed Man, which is all men, and the marriage of Standing Rain Woman, which is all women, you begin to understand that we have to share with each other in our home each other's minds. So the man needs the mother's mind. So you're introduced real early on in the creation story to the Sacred Mother. The Sacred Mother is the manifester of all spiritual things. Sometimes you go into symbols. And the traveling partner of the Creator, when he travels from galaxy to galaxy, is a spider woman. But she kind of represents, the spider kind of represents the four appendages of a man and a woman coming together to make one body with 8 legs. So what you do when you come together as a spiritual being with your wife, with your husband, is that you begin to share each other's mind with each other, and you actually become like one being. That trust has to be at that level. The love has to be at that level. The protection has to be at that level. And so your wife, your significant other, imbues you with the woman with the warrior's mind and the man with the mother's mind. So that in time, they meld as you mature and go from a regular adult, mature adult, to an old person, an old couple. So an old couple has a certain type of symbolism and beauty in our culture. And this is a little secret thing I'll tell you. Part of how you get men to think that way is real young. The mothers tease the grandsons sexually. And a part of what that does is it prepares them to have sexual affinity for an older woman. Because what happens in your middle age, you go through a midlife crisis and your manhood isn't quite what it used to be, and then you'll throw your wife away. But if your first addressing of those energies by an old lady who always flirts with you and teases you, and my first dirty jokes were told by my grandmas. And so we have a different perception of sex and teasing and, that type of perception. So that it's the genius part of our culture, is that women teach you boys about sexuality. Not the boys, not your uncles, not your dad. And they're gonna teach that anyway, but you're gonna have it from a woman. And a woman is gonna make you comfortable and safe and loved, that it's really about that interaction. So that's a little part of our culture that not many other cultures will do that. And so I grew up like that. And even I used to like to have fun with it in my 20s. My grandmas were like in their 80s, and I'd be flirting with them all the time and say, "What's up, babe?" You know what I mean? There was like people from other tribes would be looking at me like, "Did that young guy just come up to you?" And that's my grandson, you know what I mean? And so that's what it's for. It's so that you grow together with your appendages and become one person, one entity. And that entity gives birth to another generation. And spiders represent knowledge. And it also represents the knowledge that's not logical. In other tribes, they use it as a trickster god. Trickster gods permeate Native American culture. And that's how we keep our culture. Because the trickster gods, they make fun of the sacred. So when somebody says, I want to be real solemn and go to ceremonies, I want to become a holy person, they start making fun of you. It's like, you show up all dressed and you're trying to be serious, and they say, look at this guy, showed up with a gold watch and all dressed up nice, and they start teasing you. They say, who are you trying to impress? You ain't gonna impress no spirits around here. You ain't gonna impress nobody here. Or it's like if somebody tries to get you to believe something, or maybe you even have a belief, they'll start making fun of it. They'll make the sacred profane so you can find balance with it. And that's the powers of the trickster gods. And so one time I was in the doings, and this guy started making fun of the trickster god by itself. Trickster god is supposed to unend your issues. You're not supposed to go to the trickster god. And then all of a sudden that trickster god said, don't you know I could kill you? It upended what he thought the trickster god was doing. So he was still being a trickster god. He just got serious. It's whatever that you need to upend your next level of teaching. And that's what he needed to hear at that moment. They tell stories about people that try to take themselves too seriously. And if you're going to stay in spiritual balance, you can't take yourself seriously. And a good thing is that Indians like to tease. They're gonna destroy your ego. Hang around Indians, they'll destroy your ego. And they'll make fun of the very place you don't want them to ever look. That's what they're gonna look for. So in some ways, the Indians are like the best representations of the trickster gods. And as a person that's been a joke myself, it's like they'll make fun of you, what you hold sacred. And so it's that laughing and it's that upending of your seriousness. Like, do you think nobody can look at you? I can look at you and I can take you apart and I'm gonna tease you. Well, I was just thinking about our words for in language. I keep saying that when you say things in English, it doesn't quite resonate the way it does in our culture. And that's why we kind of have to like reevaluate how we think, because English is such a concrete language. I'm talking about archetypal symbolism and spirituality, and English doesn't capture that as well. So I'll go into like the names of the morning star, for instance. The name of the morning star is Hubadigusu. And it comes from when we were closer with the Pawnees, thousands or hundreds at least years ago. And they say Jupitid. And we must have at one time said Hubidig. That word means just big star. But today, if we were going to say it, we would say Sagat Gusuk, just big star, the toughest, strongest of the stars. Then we start talking about the evening star. The Pawnees use this word, they say big white female star. So when I first translated, I used to use that. But there's an old word. We use this word, Natarach Shtagan. Natarach Shtagan means the 10-petaled flaming star. And there's also a plant, a white flower, that's called a 10-petaled flaming star. And this kind of goes back to what is above is below. And when I fasted, I was talking to the spiritual leader at the time, and he said, there's medicine here. One of you will be gifted. And then I seen a flower standing maybe 20 yards away, 50, but it was tall out of the grass. And it was a big white 10-petaled flaming star. That's what that flower was called. And that's our word for the evening star. And so in real life, I got gifted there. As the years go by and centuries go by, there's not any fully operational Native American tribe as we know it that's living in total harmony with each other and within their community, that have an untouched language with an untouched pure thought. Does not exist. What the seventh generation is supposed to do is begin to rebuild it. Begin to rebuild the understanding. We begin to find the old powers, the old gods, the old entities, and relate with them again. But you can't relate like the old people because you're not them. And so you have to find a new relationship. So I always tell people, when you dream, when you vision, when you go through ceremonies and things come to you, make a song about it and sing to them. And whatever you know and whatever you understand, put that into our old language and throw a tune to it, and then begin to talk with them through the music. And the universe is frequency, sound, and vibration. And when you go into ceremonies and you use it like that, that song is a sonic key. And the sonic keys allow us to interact with things, and they create an undying sound. And this undying sound, no offense against AC/DC, but just say AC/DC song. It's really loud, and they're playing it. It sounds great. But it hits the walls. If you're outside the building, you can hear it a little ways. But if you're on the other side of town, you can't hear it. But spiritually, when you make that type of music that's aligned with the intention of the human being to make a relationship with an entity, a star, they hear you. They hear you because it's lined and it creates a sound that adds to the vibration of the universe. And your song, your sound is a part of the vibrational collective of the universe, and you've just added to it by creating out of that sacred intention of making a relationship with another being. And so whatever's outside of you is literally inside of you. And if you really wanted to come alive, find a language, sing it, sing every part of it. And that's what ceremony is. It's singing the relationship and your understanding of what that means. And the next generation will add to that. And so as we begin to rebuild the sacred hoop of life, every generation reinterprets the old culture and begins to add to it. And you lay that down for the younger people so that they can look back at the past, look at what you created, and add their songs to that conglomeration of sound through the sacred instruments of whistle, gourd, drum, collective voice. And this voice right here that we use has a filter. So we talked about the powers in the first part, and we talked about this tree of life. And I'll tell you some of the secrets of it. Your soul that's in this body is the same source consciousness that created the universe. And remember I was saying it doesn't have a former, it doesn't have a past, it only exists in the pure now. And everybody has it. Everybody has this potential to look into the universe itself by looking into yourself. And there's 5 elements. And in our symbolism, a red star on the earth represents the fire upon the earth. This left hip is a white star, also known as Sirius the dog star. And that star controls the water, but it's in your left hip. And this is a yellow star, I would say Capella. And that star oversees wind upon the earth and wind within you. It's star, earth, and within this body. So fire, your Irushka, the fire inside of you, the water inside of you, wind inside of you, and the earth within you. This is a black star we call Sagakadid, which just means black star. So these stars all have names, and they all have ways that you interact, because what's happening out there in the stars is happening in the ceremonies and happening inside this body. And so those are the ones that control those elements, okay? The 5th element doesn't have a star per se that's a part of it. And if there is one, I don't know what it is. And I would say it's the male and female part of you, but it's consciousness. So from here up is a valve, a doorway. And when your soul knows that it's time, it keeps the consciousness, the 5th element of consciousness, separate from these other 4. But when you get to a certain spiritual level, this door opens, a valve, and it allows consciousness to pour into the body. This is where supernatural power comes in. This is where you can begin to exert supernatural things upon your reality outside of yourself with your pure intentions. Consciousness enters into the body, and the power of fire, water, wind, and earth enters into the mind. And so this is symbolized by arrow going downward and the arrow going upward. And when they cross, looks like the Star of David. And it's in the throat. So when people say the word of God is in the human being, but only an elevated human being that has integrity and has come to the place where the elements have mixed within them. And whatever they say has power. So they always say, be careful what you say, because everything listens. When we sing with one heart, one mind, one spirit in ceremony, I've been in ceremonies where darn near 1,000 people were singing the same song with the same intentions, and the power of it was crazy. And then on top of it, I was in that ceremony and all the men were singing. The male parts were all powerful, but then they would back off when the women parts came in, and the women just take over the song. You know what I mean? And their power was showing itself. And it was one of the most beautiful experiences I ever had. And they're using the power of 1,000 people to fulfill whatever they gathered for. And in this case, it was a healing ceremony for somebody, or for more than one person. So they were all coming, one heart, one mind, one spirit, singing the same song with the same vibration and the same intention, and those people were healed. And so it was a real powerful experience that I had with them. If you really want to gather power, you're going to gather it from above. And that's why a lot of people can't defeat the dark powers. That's why that's why they take away your language and culture. That's why they destroyed the white people, the defeated tribes of Europe. If you want to really hamstring somebody, take away their star knowledge. And that's outlaw their language, outlaw the practice, outlaw anything that you can deem as witchcraft. When people are actually just practicing the powers within them. And some people say, you're practicing witchcraft, you're practicing this or that. At a real low level, when cultures are dying, people will practice witchcraft. But a really evolved belief system with star powers and all that stuff, it's public. It's done with the full community, with scoped, sequence, and scaffolded leadership and knowledge. And emptying yourself and making yourself empty and meditating and thinking and contemplating the mysteries of the universe. You know, every medicine person knows that at some level you're an instrument, just how good are you at it? And so if you tackle it consciously and say, I'm gonna try to make myself the best instrument of God that I can. Now you can kind of start to understand why, especially Northern Plains Indians, take such extreme levels to go and gather power. For instance, I had a grandfather, chief of the Mandans, Mato Dope. When he got smallpox, he was very angry because he knew that the guys on the ships that were coming up actually gave us smallpox blankets. People try to debate that. That's not a debate. Look at Mato Dope's last speech that he gave. And a part of that is he says, he's trying to have his people rise up and take up arms and fight. He said, I should never have helped them. I should never have, and now we're all dying. He said, let us all rise up and kill them all, and the forebears will do his part. And then right from there, he went right to the hill. Right from that speech, he walked out to the hill to seek power. Because that was the way we've always understood it, that the creator, God, the universe, the powers can impart to you solutions for whatever you're going through in your life. And he was a leader of our people, and it's up to him to be that leader, to gather power so my people can live. And if you understand some of the ceremony songs, that's what they say. Today I send my voice to you so my people will live. And so this spirituality is for strategic existence, both as an individual, as a family, and as a collective. That's why you develop spiritual power. And so that survival can be maintained and things can be passed on. And he ended up dying on the hill. Some people say he crawled back and, there's a bunch of stories about it. But the reality is that maybe he died without getting the revenge that he wished he could achieve, that he could have freed his people, and he felt like he was too close with them, and that's why we got wiped out by an intentional smallpox epidemic. But The reason I'm saying it is that here I am, almost a few hundred years later. His grandson is telling the story about his journey and about his attempt to find a solution by fasting and seeking God, both within and outside of himself, to solve problems. And maybe that's why we survived. And maybe all of us are the prayers made flesh of our ancestors. And some of these ideas around ancestors, the ancestors never die. They live in this place of perpetual harmony. They live here in this body. They live up above. They live in the tree of life somewhere. Everything that you do lives forever. So be careful what you think and what you say and what you act upon. And those things will live forever. And when you want to ascend, you have to sacrifice. You have to sacrifice something. In this case, we know that fasting, you sacrifice yourself for the good of others. So the first time I ever went 4 days on the hills seeking God with no food and water, I came back and I wanted to drive right home, but I was too weak and I got so far and I had to pull over. And I pulled over on the street. I know my grandmas were walking by and my window was down. And she came up to me, she said, I heard what you just did. And she said, what are you doing here? I said, I'm trying to go home, but I'm too wore out. I can't do it. And she said, and then she was kind of sitting there and she's like, she talked real good Hiradzo. And she said, what the wabasha? Maadza gitiawa. What's a yadatzawi adakagits? My grandson, thank you whole bunch. You have fulfilled the man's way. And I'll never forget it. Especially at that time, because my mind was like wide open. It's like she put a seed inside of me and reiterated why I had done it. Because you don't do it for you. You do it for the ones yet to come. The strength of the individual wolf is in the pack, and the power of the pack is in the wolf. But we're talking about some of the star powers. Those animals that are here on the earth, they're up there in the stars. The birds, the cranes, the woodpeckers. And for all the stars in the universe, they all make wonderful designs. And each one of the stars is a connection in some greater idea that's affecting this planet, this unit entity. And what's happening from the stars is affecting what's going on Earth, which is affecting us as individuals. There's one called Tehanu Saga. It's a half moon of chiefs. And there's a power that it brings to us, the middle star in that constellation. And I've been up there amongst them and talked with them. My flame that is my soul traveled to Tehanu Saga. You guys can all travel, so I'm not special. I'm not trying to pretend to be special. Whatever you've been thinking about, that's where your power will flow. And the more that you expand what is possible, the more you can do. The more validation you give yourself, the more you can do. So this half moon of chiefs right in the middle goes with a ceremony when we paint children. When you paint them in that manner, it's called the face of God. And I'll tell you one part of the paint. There's the known visible universe constantly expanding. But outside that universe is all the male powers of the Creator. And we call that place outside this universe the sacred breath of Creator. His power and his breath constantly gives life to this universe all the time. And that is the doorway that he works through. So he sends his sacred breath into the universe through this constellation, and specifically through the middle star. His breath comes to us, hits us on top of the head, comes down here to our nose. And when you breathe, the breath of the Creator and yours become one, because you're a little creator. And so there's no need to be afraid, because there he is. And he gives life to all things. That's one of the constellations we pray with.